Today, specifically, I want to talk about your friends and your associates and what it means to establish guardrails in the realms of our friends and our associates. These are the people that you run with. These are the people that you play with. These are the people that you work with. It's the folks that are a part of your life on an ongoing basis. And the reason we need guardrails relationally, and the reason we need guardrails even with the people that we consider our friends, is what we've already said. It's the folks we've met that generally are part of our greatest regret. Now, the pushback today a little bit, just to kind of jump ahead, is that as I'm talking, you may be tempted to think, gosh, you're being so judgmental because we're talking about your friends. These are my friends. These are the people I work with. They've been in my life a long time. And it sounds like you're asking me to be judgmental. So I want to talk about that right up front because this is a big, big deal. This is not about being judgmental. This talk today is about exercising good judgment. And there's a big difference, and I want to explain the difference real quick, and then we'll jump into this content. Being judgmental is me forming an opinion about you. Being judgmental is forming an opinion about what you should do, what you should stop doing. Being judgmental is setting myself up as a what? Starts with a J. A judge, right. Being judgmental is about, I trick questions and nobody wants to answer out loud. That's the advantage of watching from a remote site, right? So if I'm judgmental, I've set myself up as a judge and I'm judging your behavior. Judgmental is when I draw like a critical or maybe a harsh conclusion about you, expecting you to act or be different. But good judgment is different. Good judgment is about me. Good judgment is about drawing conclusions about my life. Good judgment is, in light of my past experience, the things that are most tempting to me, where I've been in the past, what happened in that last relationship, that last marriage, the way I grew up, in light of my past experience, in light of my current circumstances. I'm really mad. Current circumstances just broke up. Current circumstances just started this new job. In light of my current circumstances, in light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the best thing or what is the wisest thing, not for everybody else to do? I'm not judging you. What you do is none of my business. What is the wise thing for me to do? Judgmental assumes something about the other person. This is all about you. This is how you should respond in light of your future hopes and dreams. Now, years ago, I coined this phrase, and I've only probably used it out loud 2 or 3 times, so it's sort of an internal thing, and I'm going to share it with you. And if you think this is harsh, then please don't judge me, okay? Let's just say that, okay? But every once in a while, I find myself drawn into or in relationship or doing business with or a vendor or, somebody that there's just something, I don't know. And so the phrase I came up with for me, and you can use this, and again, I don't generally say this out loud. I have a couple times. My statement is this: I'm not emotionally mature enough to do business with you. I'm not emotionally mature enough to be your friend. Sandra and I don't feel like we're emotionally mature enough to be a part of that. In other words, I'm not telling you how to live. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm not telling you what you should, where you should go. And I'm not judging you. I'm just looking at me. I'm just looking at us. And based on our past and where we are and where we want to be, we're just not ready for it. Now, a couple of times when, there's been situations people have kind of pushed for a relationship or push, and I have said, you know what? Here's the deal. I'm not blaming you. I'm not being critical of you. It's on me. I'm not emotionally mature enough to be involved in this anymore. So you can borrow that. The point is, this is not about judging other people. This is about making wise decisions in light of the fact, come on, we've already acknowledged, that your greatest regret involved people you had met. And most of us can think of at least one person, some of you half a dozen, you wish you'd never met. Now, is that being judgmental? No, that's hindsight that says, I wish I had used better judgment. Now, if that doesn't help, let me tackle it let me go at it from a different angle. When you were a child, when you were growing up, when you were in middle school or high school, your mom or dad or your mom and dad or your uncle or your grandparents or whoever had responsibility for you, they were, if they were good grandparents, aunts, uncles, or parents, they were paranoid regarding your friends. They were. They paid such good attention to your friends, right? In fact, there were times when they said, you can't go over there, she can't come over here, you can't date her, they would forbid you. Some of your moms read your journals. Girls, ladies, if you had journals, they would sneak in there, read your journal, you'd find out, you'd be so angry, and you'd put tape on the bottom of your door to see if anybody came in your room, and then your mom took the door off. I know that's kind of a thing, take the door off. We never did that. That's kind of odd, but hey, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Some of you, they were so extreme and the situation was so extreme, maybe they pulled you out of that school and put you in a different school. Maybe they just packed up and moved, just left the community, left the state. We're going to London. We got to get you out of this environment, And when you were on the receiving end of that, your response was like, most kids are like, you're being so judgmental, you're judging my friends. Well, now many of you are parents and you are paranoid-er, okay? And the reason you're paranoid-er is because you remember who? You remember you, right? You remember your friends, and you look back. In fact, when I asked the question, have you ever met somebody you wish you'd never met? Some of you went as far back as college. Some of you went as far back as high school. So what your mama knew and what you know is that this is a thing. I mean, there's a relationship between what happens there's a thing that goes on in relationships that can be super healthy or it can be super negative. Now that you're a parent, you have some big advantages over your parents in most cases because you can stalk your kids' friends. And in fact, it's true. Come on, this is true, right? By the time you meet your kids' friends, you already know everything about them. You know where their dad works, where their mom works, the fact that there's a divorce, who their sisters are, where their parents went to college. I mean, you know all that stuff. Now, is that being judgmental? No, that's just being nosy. No, it's because you care. It's because you care. It's not that you're trying to tell other parents how to raise their kids or tell other kids what to do. It's because you care about the person that God has put in your home, your son or your daughter. And when you kind of come down on them hard, they say what, we all said, you're so judgmental, you're so judgmental. And as a parent, you're saying, no, I'm just exercising good judgment. I'm exercising good judgment. And the reason is because as I said, what your mama knew. That our friends, that your kids' friends, that our friends determine the direction and the quality of our lives. This is just true, that our friends determine the direction and quality of our lives. Let me say it this way, that the thing that makes friendship marvelous is also the thing that makes it so hazardous and so dangerous. The thing about a great friendship or a great group of associates is that, you have stuff in common. It's easy, it's relaxing. But what happens when you're around people you consider friends, and this is supposed to happen, is you drop your guard. You let your guard down. And with certain groups of people, that's safe. But with other groups of people, that's dangerous. But that is the nature. That's not a good or bad thing. That's just a thing. That's just the nature of relationships and the nature of friendships. So the thing that makes, relationships so powerful is the thing that makes them so hazardous. You may not know this about yourself, but you are an acceptance magnet. This is part of being human. You are drawn to environments where you are accepted deeply. We all are. And if those are good environments, great. If they're not, that's not great, but we're drawn there either way. We are drawn toward places where we feel safe, where we feel accepted. And you've seen this happen with other people. You maybe can remember this from something in your past, but this is a continuous, ongoing dynamic, which means when it comes to relationships, friendships, associates, we need to be a little bit on our guard. We need guardrails. Now, if your experience doesn't prove this to you, or that's not enough evidence, my assistant, Diane Grant, sent me an article last week because she knew I was talking about this. And it's an article written by a neuroscientist, Maureen Cerf, who is a professor at Northwestern University. And for over 10 years, he has been studying relationships and decision-making and the relationship of decision-making on relationships. And here's what he has discovered, that what we have observed about people influencing other people isn't just behavioral, it's actually neurological. that something happens in your brain. In fact, in this study, they've discovered that that the brain waves of people when they spend time together actually begin to look identical. That the brain waves, before the behavior, before the attitude change, there is something that happens on the inside in our brains when we spend time with other people. Brain waves begin to line up. Now, that's kind of scary. That can encourage you or discourage you. Here's what he says, a couple of statements from the article. He says, the more we study engagement, we see time and time again that just being next to certain people actually aligns your brain with them. So look to your left, look to your right, okay? That while we sit here together, your brain waves are being aligned with him. In fact, it just happened. It did. Let me tell you how it just happened. Words came out of my mouth. I vibrated the air in the room, and your brain took those vibrations and turned them into words, and then you laughed with people you've never met with before. It just happened. Your brain wave, just me making you laugh together kind of lined you up. That's kind of scary. He says, this isn't just behavioral. This is neurological. He goes on and he says this, and this is pretty powerful. If people want to maximize happiness, that's me, and minimize stress, that's you. Don't we all want to maximize happiness and minimize stress? Look at this conclusion he draws. They should build a life that requires fewer decisions. How? By surrounding themselves with people who embody the traits they prefer. That if you surround yourself with people who embody, that is, live out the traits you prefer, he says, without any effort, without any decision on your part, your brain will begin to line up with the people who are becoming the kind of person that you ultimately want to be. Now think about that. Last statement, he says this. He says, over time, they'll naturally pick up on those desirable attitudes and behaviors. But the flip side is true as well. Over time, you can pick up on undesirable attitudes and behaviors. With no effort, just being in proximity, simply doing life being with people who are moving in a particular direction, something happens in your brain and in my brain. Now, is that judgmental? No, that's just true. This isn't about judgmental. This is about exercising good judgment. If this happens automatically, what should you do? If this happens automatically, how do I harness that? How should I respond? This isn't about being judgmental. Come on, look over here. This is about your future. Your future will be impacted by the people you spend time with. Your future will be impacted by the people you are in community with. Your future will be impacted by the people that you do life with. Now, interestingly enough, 3,000 years ago, before we were able to look at the brain, King Solomon, Israel's third king, there was Saul, then David, and then his son Solomon became king, considered one of the wisest men who've ever lived. Some people say the wisest man who will ever live. 3,000 years ago, he makes a statement that punctuates what we have finally discovered. 3,000 years ago, here's what Solomon wrote. He said, walk with the wise, and you automatically, with no effort, no intentionality, you don't have to write anything down, you don't have to remember anything, you don't have to study for a test. Walk with the wise, and you will, over time, become wise. It's just going to happen automatically. Now, what is wisdom? We've talked about this. Wisdom is somebody who understands that life is connected, that the dots connect, that my past connects to my present, which is going to be some sort of predictor of my future. That's what wisdom is. And he says, if you spend time with wise people, over time you will become wise. That wisdom is contagious. Imagine that. It just rubs off. Do life with the wise, and you will be wise. And then there's a second part of this, or the way I memorized this a long, long time ago, the word was but, because it's a contrast. He says, but, or for, a companion of fools ultimately suffers harm. Now, we don't use the word fool because, you don't want to call someone a fool, but in the Jewish Bible, in the Jewish scriptures, a fool was a person who did not live carefully. A fool was somebody who did not understand about how the past connects to the present. That's a predictor of the future. A fool is somebody that just lives for the day. A fool is is the person that's like, well, tomorrow is tomorrow, and when I get to tomorrow, I'll deal with tomorrow. A fool is someone who, as Paul said last week when we started the series, is not careful. Remember the Apostle Paul says, walk carefully or live carefully or be careful where you step, essentially he said. A fool is someone who's just not careful. But the interesting thing about what Solomon said is what he doesn't say. Let me read it to you again. Walk with the wise and you become wise. Okay, if I hang out with wise people, I become wise. You would expect him to say, hang out with fools and you'll become a fool, but he doesn't say that. What Solomon says is that it's worse than that. Because if you spend time with, surround yourself with, do life with fools, over time, you're not simply going to become a fool, you're going to suffer harm. That is, when their life goes bad, it's a proximity thing. The closer you are to them, the greater the odds that something bad happens to you. As they go, you go. To which we say, yeah, but I don't do what they do. To which Morin Cerf, the neuroscientist, would say, yeah, but stick around them long enough and you probably will, because your brain waves are going to line up. So Solomon says it's worse than becoming a fool. You're actually going to catch the shrapnel from their bad decisions. Again, every parent, you get this. Because you don't want your kids with certain kids, not because they're necessarily going to do what certain kids do, but because you're afraid when the certain kids do that, your kids will be harmed by their decisions. We get this. That's not judgmental. This is about good judgment. In other words, friends, this is what Solomon's saying. Friends who aren't careful with their lives won't be careful with your life, right? Friends who aren't careful with their health, they're not going to be concerned about your health. Friends who aren't careful with their marriages, they're not going to be careful and try to guard your marriage. Friends who aren't careful with their finances, they're not going to try to guard and be careful with your finances. Friends who aren't all that concerned about their reputation, they're not going to be all that concerned about your reputation. Friends who don't have any kind of faith or don't have any concerns about faith aren't going to be very concerned about your faith. And friends who don't seem to care about the future, the last thing they're going to worry about is your future. This is good judgment. This is a big deal. And this isn't about middle school and high school. This is about all of us. Friends who don't take care of themselves won't take care of yourself. Friends who lie and cheat, you know this? Friends who lie and cheat, they feel better when you what? Lie and cheat. So again, friendship can be awesome, but friendship can be treacherous. Friendship requires some guardrails. Now, just a reminder, the point of a guardrail isn't to keep you from just doing bad things. The point of a guardrail is to light up your conscience so that you know you're getting close to doing bad things. So the way I said it here, the point of a guardrail is to light up your conscience before we veer into the danger zone. Remember, a guardrail isn't in the danger zone, and a guardrail isn't right on the line. The guardrail is inside the safety zone. And again, this is why we resist. But for the next few minutes, as we close out this episode of this series, I want to make 5 suggestions as it relates to guardrails, as it relates to your friendships and your associates. Now, I know this. In some cases, you don't have total control over who you spend a lot of time with. I get that. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But I want to encourage you. If I could get on my knees and plead with you, and I thought it would do good, I want to encourage you to consider these. And again, I don't want you to listen to what I'm about to say through the filter of your kids or your grandkids. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard not to do that. Or some friends that you have that you wish were here or you wish were watching. I just want this to settle in over us as we consider our future, because your friends and your associates impact the direction of your life. So here's 5 suggestions. Again, these aren't rules. You don't need to write these down. You may want to go back and listen to this or look at these later. But 5 suggestions just to get you thinking about guardrails as it relates to folks you've met, so that they won't become the next regret. Here's the first one. When it dawns on you that your core group isn't moving in the direction you want your life to be moving, that should light up your conscience. When it dawns on you, you know what, we love the same music, we love the same food, we love the same artists, we have so much in common, but when I look at the direction this group is moving in, it's not really the direction I want my life to move in. That's a warning. That's a guardrail. That's not a good or a bad thing. That's a wisdom thing, and you got to pay attention to that, because relationships are not static. Relationships are either growing or decaying. They're getting better or they're getting worse. And when you're surrounded by a group of people that you have a lot in common with, of course you drop your guard. That's what we do around friends. But when it dawns on you, you know what? They're just not moving in the direction I want my life to move in. That should tip you off that perhaps I need to rethink this group of friends or this group of associates. Where people are heading is a good indicator of where they're leading. And none of us think about our group of friends as leading us anywhere. But here's what you know in hindsight. Your friends ultimately lead you. Just like you are ultimately leading other people through a group of friends. This is just the nature of relationships. So when it dawns on you, your core group isn't moving in the direction you want your life to be moving, that should light up your conscience. Here's the second one. When you catch yourself pretending to be someone other than who you really are, that should light up your conscience. In other words, when you catch yourself nodding and you're thinking, I don't believe this, but my head's doing this. What's going on? Or you find yourself going like this and you're thinking, no, I actually agree, but everybody else's head's doing this. I think neurologically, all of a sudden our brains are all connected. We're all doing this and I should be doing, what's going on? When you feel the pressure to pretend to be somebody other than who you truly are, that's a red flag. That should light up your conscience. That should make you rethink or reconsider the nature of this relationship. Because as you know, your views and values hopefully are being shaped around things that are going to serve you well in the future. But when you find yourself agreeing on the outside with things you disagree on the inside, hey, that's a red flag. That should light up your conscience. Don't settle for friends who force you to pretend to be somebody you're not. Because here's why. Because you are lying to them, which means you're not a good friend. And if you lie to yourself long enough, you will become someone other than yourself. This happens all the time. And pretending is lying, and pretending is never healthy. So if you're, again, surrounded with friends and you find yourself pretending to be somebody other than you're not, you just need to pay attention to that. Do you need to do something immediately? I don't know. But you need to pay attention to that. Third one is this. When you feel pressure to compromise. Not once you've compromised. That's, we've gone past the guardrail into the ditch, right? Not when you've actually compromised, but let me put it this way. When something that before wasn't a real temptation, but suddenly it's become a live option, that should light up your conscience. When something that's never been a real temptation before becomes a live option, you've always just said, no, thank you. No, I'm going to go. I'll go on home. No, you guys go. Or you ladies, you go. And you find yourself driving home thinking, you know what? I think I'll go. Or no, I shouldn't. When what has never been a temptation, never been an issue, never been a problem before, when it becomes on the inside, when it becomes right here, a live option, a real consideration, maybe I should rethink that. There's probably nothing wrong with that. They're always inviting me. That should just light up your conscience. Now, what should you do with that? I don't know. That's up to you. But it should bother you. It should bother you. It should bother you. Again, not when you've crossed that line. When suddenly you find yourself imagining what it would be like if you had. The next one, number 4, is this. When you catch yourself thinking, I'll go, but I won't participate. Now, you laugh. I'll just go, but I won't participate. Let me just ask you a question because it'll bring instant clarity to this. Would you buy this from your 14-year-old daughter? No, it's 12 guys, but me and my girlfriend are going to go, but Dad, they're going to be doing bad things, but I'm not going to participate. Well, honey, you just go right ahead. That'll be fine. No, you give your daughter 2 options. Either you stay home or I go with you. You choose, okay? You have 2 options. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying there's going to be 3 guys there. You're looking at the third one, right? So we wouldn't buy this from our kids or our younger brother or sister or our nieces and our nephews or our granddaughters or grandsons. Why would we buy it from ourselves? When you start that conversation, I'm not saying you shouldn't go. I'm just saying when this conversation starts in my head or your head, it should bother us. It should ding our conscience. We just bumped up against a guardrail. Very little damage done. But pay attention to the conversation you're having in your heart. When you catch yourself thinking, I'll go, but I won't participate. The last one is this, is when you hope the people you care about don't know your whereabouts. When you hope the people you care about don't know your whereabouts. And even once you get to whereabout you're going, even if you do nothing wrong, even if you don't break any laws, even if you're not in any way unfaithful or do anything to embarrass yourself or your family, the fact that in your heart and in your mind, you have begun, don't miss this, you have begun, this is the nucleus of a lie. You haven't lied yet. But if you think you would be tempted to lie so they don't know where you are or who you are with, that should bother you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you have established a guardrail. If you wouldn't want to have to tell them, if you hope they never find out, that should bother you. Come on, we're adults. That should be enough. That should tip you off. Okay, if I don't want the people that I care about to know where I am, to know my whereabouts, then I have no business going.